everyone. Thanks so much for joining me for this week's episode of When I Grew Up. On today's episode, it's my pleasure to welcome my guest, Dr. Jason Chong. Hey, Jason, how are you?
Hey, Blair. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Oh man, I'm like so excited to catch up with you.
I know, it's crazy. Like, it's been so long since we've talked, and
Seriously.
now we're doing this. Whew.
I mean, look, I feel like the last time I saw you maybe was even your senior year of high school. No?
No, not
There's
that
no
far
way,
back.
right? There's no way.
I remember there was a time in college where we did a lot of stuff through church together. But it was like early on in college.
Okay.
2009.
Oh yeah, that was a long time
which
ago.
which is a very long time ago now.
But since then, a lot has changed. I keep up with you through social media. I got married. He got married. We have our own families now. UGA won a national championship since then, and go dogs.
Go dogs.
But the reason I asked you on is because I think selfishly wanted to catch up, but also you have a lot to share, I feel, about your career and your journey. Jason is here because he is a physical therapist, and we've had a physical therapist on before. But I have realized in doing the podcast that everyone's story and journey is so different. And like, I feel like there's a lot of value in that in people listening. So, Jason, without me, prolonging this intro, I'd like to know, what is it that you do?
What is it that I do?
Yes.
So, as you said, I am a physical therapist, and gosh, that's such an open-ended question. I guess to keep it short, I help people feel better physically, and sometimes I guess it transitions into emotional well-being, but primarily, physical therapists, I'm providing therapy for the physical aspect of a human being.
Okay, that's a really good explanation, I feel like. And I like it a lot because I even like the part where you said it eventually leads to their emotional well-being too. Because as an, I guess, very ex-athlete myself, when you're physically miserable or need help, your mental well-being is not okay most of the time. So I'd love to get into that a little more with you. But before we do, I guess, what does a typical day for you as a physical therapist look like?
So about 3 months ago, I actually changed jobs, and I guess I can go more into detail about that later. But right now, I am working in an assisted living facility. I'm working at 2 different places, and it's essentially a retirement home where older individuals go to live, and they have assistance with living. And so my job is to be, not everybody there gets physical therapy, but anyone who has any certain issues or something that they want to achieve physically, they will get a doctor's note, and then they will request my services. So ultimately, I'm just kind of like their exercise friend, and just like someone who can help them to stay healthy and active.
But okay, that makes sense. But also, you're there so that they don't injure themselves doing it, right?
I would say in that stage of life, it's not necessarily preventative, but more maintenance. So let's say, so I'll give you an example. Like, no, not to give too much detail about an individual, but let's just say person A, John, he was trying to get out of bed and he fell and he hurt his hip. So he went to the hospital, and the doctor was like, you know what? You have some issues with balance. You have trouble getting up and down. We don't want this to become a recurring issue where you keep falling. Let's get you some physical therapy. So then that doctor's note will go through my system, and then I'll do an assessment with them, talk to them, say, okay, what are you having trouble with? What are some goals? What are some things that you want to be able to do more, whether it's within the assisted living facility or if it's like to go visit a family member? or if it's just to like maintain what you have right now so that you do not decline further.
Mm.
And so for the example of John, it's to, make sure they're strong enough and they have the awareness in terms of like what we call balance and proprioception. So balance, everybody needs to have good balance so that they don't
Mm-hmm.
fall over and bump into things like,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then the proprioception aspect is just your awareness of your body in space. So imagine like when you're walking around a corner and sometimes you like bump your shoulder into the wall, right? Or at
Mm-hmm.
least I do. And so that means, I need to be able to work more on being able to understand like, okay, is my shoulder like right next to the wall? Or do I need to go around a little bit further so I don't hit it all the time? And
Mm.
that's just like I guess I don't want to get too descriptive, but that's kind of like an example of what we more work on in
Um,
terms of assisted living.
that's really fascinating to me because I'm like, how do you even work on that? Like, there are exercises that I could do to make myself less like that.
Yes. There's obviously like a textbook, kind of like a foundation in terms of just general strengthening, right?
Uh-huh.
But each individual is built differently, is designed differently. And the things
Mm-hmm.
that we've developed in terms of habits physically and just kind of behaviorally is going to be different per person. And so think about, I'll say the average age of my patients right now is about 75 to 80 years old.
Okay.
And so think about for those 75 to 80 years, they did things a certain way. And so I'm not
Mm.
going to go in there and in 2 weeks change their tendencies and their habits, but I can kind of draw attention to, hey, you're doing this, and that's what's causing A, B, C. So let's
Mm.
try this so that we can not necessarily eliminate it, but reduce it. So the next
Mm.
time I see you, you're not coming in here with a broken hip.
Right, right.
Hmm.
Wow. So like you're only 2 months into this particular, I guess, what do you call it?
Assisted living.
Yes, but like it seems as though I'm discovering in physical therapy there are a lot of different avenues you can take as a
Hmm.
physical therapist, right? But you've
Right.
been in this for 2 months. Like, how has that been for you?
It's been great.
Oh.
So my previous job, it was good too. I enjoyed it, but it was almost like a complete 180
Mm-hmm.
in terms of lifestyle. So
Oh.
my previous job was more of like a 9 to 5, very concrete schedule. People come to my office. I see them for 30 minutes to an hour, and they almost dictate my schedule, right? If they
Mm-hmm.
don't
Mm-hmm.
show up, I can't just put someone in there and just
Mm.
replace. I have to be there from 9 to 5. Now, in an assisted living facility, they all live there. So I'm just walking down the halls, knocking on doors, going into their rooms, be like, hey, I'm here today. You want to do some physical therapy? I
Mm.
have time at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, such and such.
Mm.
If they say, no, not feeling it today, I can go somewhere else and kind of just like pick and choose my people. And on rare occasions or some occasions, if everybody's out and about doing things and it's about 3 p.m., I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to pack up and go home. And so the beauty of that for me personally is it gives me more time to kind of take care of myself and then also take on more family responsibilities. For us, we don't have any kids, we have a dog. And so,
Mm.
and my wife, as we talked about earlier before we started the podcast, she's a hairstylist. So she also has a very full day
Sure,
of
yeah.
she's got to be at the salon. So we don't want our dog to be, holding his pee all day.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
it allows us that flexibility to do more things and just that freedom.
Yeah. That's
Mhm.
awesome. And how is it like was it a shift? Like, I don't mean I have no idea. Like working with like older people?
Okay. Um, this is actually kind of funny because the person who you interviewed before as a physical therapist, Edward,
Uh-huh.
he is who helped me transition into this new job.
Really?
Yes. So Edward and I actually have a really close relationship. He helped me before I began PT school with shadowing and observation hours and just kind of going through the process of
Mm.
applying to PT school. And so I owe a great deal of gratitude towards him for
Mm.
helping me get through school and then even like seeking out jobs after I graduated. So for the first 2.5 years, I graduated PT school in 2019. And so I started practicing maybe October of that year.
Mm-hmm.
And for about 2.5 years, I worked in an outpatient orthopedic clinic, which is where, you might have seen them on the roads, like the benchmarks, the
Okay.
physios, all those,
Yes.
mainstream physical therapy clinics. And so I did that. And after about 2.5 years, I said, you know what? I'm starting to get a little complacent. I'm getting burnt out. I'm tired. I'm not taking care of myself. I would say I got to a point where I was starting to feel depressed. And
Mm.
so my wife was, she's very supportive and she's always like, "You're so good at what you do." I don't she says that. But anyway, she's like, "You're so good at what you do. You have so much room to grow and do different things." So I said, "You know
Yeah.
what? I need a change of scenery." So I
Mm.
contacted Edward. We had dinner. He's telling me what he's doing. And he does a little different. He does home health and he also does a private cash based one on one type of setting.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope Edward doesn't mind me saying this. He was telling me how much he was making. And I'm just sitting there like, you're paying for dinner because you're making way more money than me. So I'm like, hold on. It's not all about the money, but why am I,
Yeah.
breaking myself down, miserable? Just, when I'm at work, I do what I need to do. I feel like I provide a good service,
Yeah.
but again, at the same time, my body was breaking down
Mm.
and I was starting to get really quiet. I didn't want to talk when I got home because I'm talking so much at work, right?
Right. Right.
And that's great. I enjoy my time, but it's taxing, right?
Yeah.
It's draining. So he said, "You know what? Why don't you venture out into home health?" And so I started applying, looking at home health opportunities. While I was applying to that, I was drawn to assisted living. And I would say that me personally, I have a range in terms of I love working with children. I like working with people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, but I also like working with the geriatric population. Now, I didn't see myself in my profession being primarily in a geriatric population,
Mm-hmm.
but I said, it doesn't hurt to try. It's not like binding to a 10-year contract or something. It's just kind of like, all right, feel it out, see if you like it, and go from there, and
Mm.
provide yourself opportunities to expand upon your resume, your experiences, and all that. So I said, let's go for it. And so here I am doing assisted living, and I'm telling my wife, like, I'm the happiest I've been in a long time.
Oh my
Granted, I was
gosh.
very happy when we got married. Don't get me wrong, but in terms of career
Yeah.
and school and all that, I was like, I'm the happiest I've been in a long time.
Wow.
And so we're thinking like, okay, what is it? What is it about assisted living that I enjoy? And one thing it's again talking about like I'm kind of just their friend. And
Mm.
although they have, people who live in the assisted living facility, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm not even answering the question at this point. I'm just
No,
like bouncing
no.
off the walls.
I like it. It's good.
Okay.
It's good.
So, they'll have family members visit and they'll have activities like they'll do bingo and they'll have like little exercise dance classes. They do like happy hour on Fridays where they all get a drink at 3 p.m. And essentially I can't do any physical therapy at that point. But when they're with me, they just want to tell me all their stories. And it's so
Yeah.
fun because
Yeah.
they're telling me about things in like the 40s, the
Right.
50s. And I'm just like,
Right.
that's crazy. It's like everyone has such an interesting and different background.
Mm.
And so that kind of conversation for me is like, yeah, there's still days when I get tired. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to, be
Yeah.
there,
Work
but
is work at the end of the
work
day.
is work, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's just I feel more fulfilling and I feel
Mm.
like, I've accomplished so much, yet I still have all this energy and willpower to come home, go to the gym, clean up the house, do something else that's more productive rather than before I would come home, sit on the couch and turn on Netflix or watch, some movie or something. And I'm
Right.
just like
Yeah.
a shell of myself.
Yeah.
And so I don't even think that was the question you asked
No,
me.
that was the question. So you enjoy it, and no, the question was like, do you enjoy working with elderly people, geriatric patients,
Yes.
and I feel like the explanation you gave was much more purposeful in that, because. Mm, forgive me for saying this, but it's just because I'm not educated in the area.
Oh,
But
it's
like,
okay.
yeah, I think when I think of a physical therapist, I think of Benchmark. And I told Edward this too. Like, I think of those
Mm,
kind of, you get hurt and then you go and then they help you get better. And then,
mhm.
or they give you exercises to do. And
Right.
they're just kind of sitting there counting with you. And like, that's cool. But then I also know there are different parts of physical therapy now, but I never knew that there would be an in-house assisted living physical therapist, for grandparents, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's why I think it's really like fascinating for me to hear that you're doing this too in this capacity, and you seem to love it. Like you do seem very alive, like talking about it. And so that I feel like people listening, if they're ever interested in going into PT, like they need to know that there are so many different fields, I'm sure, right?
Right. So kind of like what you were saying about the benchmarks and all that. When I first, um, I guess, pursued physical therapy as an undergrad student, right? My initial idea of it was okay, I grew up playing sports.
Mm.
I endured injuries as you did, Blair, and I went to physical therapy. I wasn't a very good patient, but I was like, you know what? My dreams of going to the NBA died about 20 years ago, and I don't want to sit at a desk all day. I don't
Mm.
want to stare at a computer and do computer work. So I contacted one of my good friends who you are very familiar with. He was in PT school at the time, and
That's
he
right.
told me about it. And so I'm just thinking, okay, I'm going to go work with the sports team, or I'm going to go work with athletes and make them feel better.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, there's so much to pursue with physical therapy. What's really good is that before you even go to school, they encourage you, they actually need you to go spend time in different settings to observe and shadow and be like, okay, is this really something I want to do?
Okay.
And so for me, I went to a hospital setting, an inpatient setting, a pediatric setting, and then benchmark, and I even shadowed Edward. So I kind of got to see a little bits and pieces of what the potential is as a physical therapist. Now, even at that point, I was still like, okay, I want to work with athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And so PT school starts, it's a 3-year program. And as time goes by, they have you go out and do 6-week, 12-week clinicals. And they
Oh.
make sure you go do different things.
Mm.
And as I'm doing it, I'm like, it's really rewarding to help just your average Joe or your average Jane, just so that they don't feel bad getting out of bed, or
Mm.
they don't feel like a full day of work. They come home and they can't do it. They feel destroyed, right?
Mm.
That's not sports related. That's just physical, stress.
Yeah.
And so I guess ultimately, I'm not restricting myself just to assisted living.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to restrict myself just to outpatient orthopedic or sports related rehab.
Mm-hmm.
And so right now I'm kind of just a sponge. I'm in my 3rd year as a physical therapist, and I still want to venture out and do a bunch of different things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, the autonomy of being a physical therapist is really fun and exciting. So
Yeah.
it's hard to get complacent, right?
Oh man. So, okay, tell me a little bit about physical therapy school then. So, you have to get your bachelor's,
Yes.
and then what happens?
So you do your undergrad, you do your prereqs, all the sciences and a little bit of psychology and all that, because you do have to interact with people.
Okay.
And
What was your
yeah.
degree in undergrad?
So the traditional route of going to physical therapy school is getting your bachelor's in exercise science.
Okay.
Now, without making this too long of a story, I started out at Georgia State and I wanted to be a journalist. Completely different, right? I
Oh,
wanted to
I
write.
remember
Yeah, I
this.
used to write, a sports blog, and at one point I tried to write a book and I got like 2 chapters in and I stopped. But
You did?
uh, yeah, we don't have, I don't know where it is. Like it's gone.
What was it about? We got just 1 minute. What was this about? What was the book about?
Let's save that for another day.
Oh
I want to stay off
no.
the
Okay,
record
fine,
on
fine. Okay. When you
it was
publish it.
it was nothing great. It was just very vanilla, nonfiction. Like,
I've
yeah.
never started writing a book, so that's pretty cool. But anyways, okay, so you were
Mhm.
gonna be a journalist, a writer, uh-huh.
And so I took one mass communication class in 2 weeks, and I said, this is so boring, and I don't want to do this. And so you can cut this out if this is too long. But after about 3 years at state, I wasn't really taking school seriously. And my dad said, you know what? Why don't you just go to Korea and get better at Korean so that you can be, if you're gonna, eventually be like a businessman or do something in in Atlanta or Georgia, you're gonna probably do business with Korean people at some point in your life. And I said, okay. So I moved to Korea, lived there for 6 months while I was at Yonsei University, just taking Korean classes and just kind of getting better at speaking Korean, just more fluent, right? So as I'm there, I'm getting homesick, and I'm like, well, when I go back, I'm not going to stay here. I got to go back to the States at some point,
Right,
right? And so
yeah.
when I go back, what am I going to do? I'm not doing well in school. My GPA is really low. I don't want to be a journalist. I got to change my major. What the heck am I going to do?
Yeah.
And so that's when I talked to my buddy about what's it like being in physical therapy school.
Mm.
So I come back to Georgia, um, still at Georgia State, do one more semester and apply. I apply to UGA because, my dream was always to be a Georgia Bulldog, right? Go Dogs.
Go dogs.
And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to Georgia. I'm going to start brand new. Of course, my GPA follows me, but I was like, I'm going to start brand new. So I get there, I do orientation. I'm so excited. I'm like, yes, I'm in Athens. And then they tell me you have to go through an application process to get into the exercise science program. So I'm
Right.
thinking, I've already been in college for about three and a half years. And now I have to get into a program to now start exercise science. I was like, no, I
Mm.
can't do that. I'll be in college for 8 years. And my parents are going to kick me out of the house, all
Yeah.
that. So I decided to pursue an easier degree, or not necessarily easier, but a degree that doesn't require an application process. And that was sociology.
Oh,
So
okay.
I got my sociology degree while taking my science prerequisites for physical therapy school. And so once you finish undergrad at that point, you have to take the GRE, which is just the SAT on steroids.
Okay.
And so at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm studying for the GRE. I haven't applied to PT school yet. Let's get let's make some money. Let's get some experience. So I applied to work as a physical therapy assistant, or not a physical therapy assistant, a physical therapy aide or a tech,
Okay.
which they help like set up the machines. They help clean up the
Ah.
tables. They do administrative work. And I was fortunate to get a job with Emory Physical Therapy, and I worked there for 9 months as I was applying to PT school.
Oh, wow.
And so PT school starts, and it's a 3-year program. Worst 3 years of my life.
Mm.
Made lots of good friends, but worst 3 years of my life, without a doubt.
Oh man,
And
why?
it's just a lot of studying.
Yeah.
It's a lot of information just being thrown into your brain, right? My brain's not that big. You know me, Blair. I'm not that smart. And
It's not
I'm
true.
just having to stay up late, stressing about tests, flipping through my review sheets and my books until the very moment the test starts, things like that. But yeah, it's a grueling 3 years where did you want me to talk about my 3 years in PT
I
school?
do. Yeah, I do. If you don't
Okay.
mind.
Every PT program is a little different.
Okay.
So some people, they just throw you into clinical rotations just to get some experience. Other places will wait a little bit, but most places will start with the standard anatomy and physiology classes so that you know all your muscles, all your bones, nerves, the physics and the mechanics of how the body works.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do that. First year, we actually had the opportunity to work with cadavers. And so our lab had about 12 cadavers. And we spent 3 semesters, without getting too graphic, we spent 3 semesters cutting into them, pulling apart muscles and identifying different landmarks of the body and just doing all that kind of stuff.
So like you need to know that because you are essentially you have to know these things in order to work with people's bodies.
Right. So the thing is, a textbook can explain things, and your professor can tell you things.
Uh-huh.
But again, going back to how each individual human being is designed differently, right?
Yeah.
So your shoulder is not going to look like my shoulder if we did an x-ray on it or if we cut
Right.
into it.
Right.
And so when we have these cadavers, we cut into them and we see and we're like, wow, you know, A is so much different from F and B is completely different from D and all that stuff. So
Wow.
it gave us a different perspective.
Uh-huh.
Also grossed us out a lot, but
I'm kind of
it,
surprised you stomached that.
yeah, it took me a little while to get used to it, but by the second month of it, I was like all up in there. I
Oh,
was just like, let me
wow.
cut this, let me do this, and yeah, I don't think I'd do it again, but
So grueling, but also fun for you. Like
oh,
interesting.
absolutely, a lot of a lot of fun experiences, whether it was with my classmates, with my professors, or even during my rotations. Nothing fun about the studying or taking tests,
Right,
but
right.
everything else was yes, without being too, I don't want to be complaining, but it was a great experience. Would I
Well,
do it
okay.
again? No, but
Well, the reason I ask is because you said you took your mass communications class and you're like, this is not it.
hmm
But like you felt differently.
felt differently. Yes, I will say there was like a fear factor to it where I went to a private school for PT school. So a lot
Mm,
of money was coming out of loans, and that was something I was going to have to pay for eventually. So I was
sure.
like, well, you started, you better get to the finish line or
Wow.
it's going to be a, complicated process. But
Right, right. Yeah.
but yes, I would say it was fun just learning and seeing myself grow and
Mm,
understanding that, whoa, I can actually do this. I think a lot of people can relate to me in this sense, but you have the imposter syndrome
mm,
where when you start to accomplish your goals, you start to think, gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this. Like, I don't know that I can actually complete it. I don't think I'm
sure.
capable of doing it.
Right.
So again, going back to my wife, she was super supportive, always had my back. Um, I would cry to her, during school. I'd be like, I can't do this anymore. Like
Mm,
my head hurts.
yeah, yeah.
And she was very supportive and, she showed me what I can do. And then with that, I started to believe in myself and started to say, you know what? I'm going to finish this. I'm going to do this. And with that belief in myself, I started to enjoy it more.
Yeah, that's
I
awesome. But no,
guess.
I can totally relate to that imposter syndrome. I think across the board with most of my podcast guests, like they've all experienced this and
Mhm.
even myself sometimes daily. Like
Oh
I'm like,
yeah,
what am I doing? But
yeah.
yeah, no, I get it. I get it. So if you fast forward to your last year of PT school,
Mhm.
is that just clinicals or do you have to still do stuff in class or
Gosh, I don't remember, Blair. It was like 3 years ago,
oh
but
man, not that long ago.
so so it was a little bit like staggered in terms of we would go out and do our clinicals. Like
hmm
some of my friends would be in Texas and Vegas and Philadelphia, all over the place, right?
Like you
I
get
stayed.
placed somewhere?
Mhm. I
Okay,
stayed
okay.
in Georgia. They actually wanted me to go to Vegas for one. I said no for wound care, but we can save that story for another day.
Oh wow.
Mm, so the last year of PT school, you're doing your clinicals, but then you go back to school for a couple of weeks and then you take classes and they almost more so prepare you for the real world. Like,
Mm-hmm.
all right, you did all the textbook stuff. Let's get to the real business. Let's talk
Mm-hmm.
about um, licensing, passing the state board exam and all that stuff. So,
Right.
adult stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So licensing and all that stuff,
hmm
do you have to keep up with it or you just pass a test once and you're done?
So after PT school, you take the state board exam, you pass, you get your license.
Uh-huh.
But every 2 years, you have to renew your license. Luckily, we don't have to take any other tests,
Uh-huh.
or I might not be talking to you right now. But we just have to show that we're still continuing education. So, I guess with that being said, there's different things that you can build your credentials on. So, I do something called dry needling, which you
Okay.
don't learn in PT school. You get introduced to it, but you can specialize in it once you're out of school.
Okay.
And so It's kind of similar to acupuncture. You poke needles into muscles and you address trigger points and all that. But again, I don't want to get too worried. You can edit that part out. I'm panicking. But
Okay,
so
okay.
you
Keep
have
going.
to have at least 50 hours of continuing education in that 2 year window to then renew your license. So you just have to
Mm.
always be doing like you just have to always be adding knowledge because in healthcare everything's changing constantly. If there's no absolute in terms of medicine, so you can't just be relying on, or me, I can't just be relying on my information that I gathered from 2016 to 2019
Of course,
in
yeah.
2030.
Right,
And so
right.
again, they just want you to expand upon your knowledge and make sure you're up to date and whether you want to follow the new stuff versus go the traditional route, all that, but they just want to make sure that you're on top of your game, right?
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Mhm.
I actually do want to know about, excuse me, dry needling though, like because
Okay.
I'm really curious, just personally. Like so, you said it's like acupuncture. I've actually never gotten
Yeah.
acupuncture before,
Okay.
but like, why is that physical therapy?
So gosh, every time someone asks me this question of
Mm.
like acupuncture versus dry needling, I'm like, well, I don't know that much about acupuncture. I should probably read up on it. And then I don't. But from my common knowledge of acupuncture, it's more pressure points
Okay,
or
I mean
someone
that's
can
what I know
correct me
about
on
it
that.
too.
Right. So it's not intramuscular. So
Okay,
what I mean by that is the needle doesn't go in the muscle, right?
I see.
And so what we do is we address what we call trigger points, which is like stress built up in the muscle. And so when that muscle, it can be like now going back to the emotional stress. A lot of times these trigger points are caused by emotional stress.
Okay.
Um, Sometimes it's physical stress. So combine those two things. And what happens is if you just to draw an image, think of like muscles just turning into like a ball of muscle fibers. And it gets real tight.
Uh huh.
And so what helps those or what activates those muscles to move? It's the nerves, right? So the nerves run through muscles. So if you imagine like these nerves running through muscles and then a bundle of fibers
Uh
squeezes
huh.
on those
Uh
nerves,
huh.
our nerves are all connected from head to toe. So if
Right.
it squeezes, let's say your shoulder's real tight because you've been on your computer for 12 hours a day and those muscles start to get real tight and squeezes on those nerves, it's not just going to hurt in your shoulder. Some people will get headaches. Some people will have neck pain. Some people will have shoulder pain, even back in their upper back area. So it's what we call referred pain. So what the needle does is it'll go into those hot spots where we have trigger points, and it causes this like fatigue effect. It releases lactic acid. So when we go to the gym and we work out, we get really sore, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a result of lactic acid releasing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so then there's like this like breakdown of the muscle and then a healing process. So what the
Okay.
needling does is it breaks down those muscles in terms of like the micro perspective, not like the whole muscle,
Okay.
but
Okay.
it breaks it down and then allows healing and then you feel better.
Wow.
Now it's not for everybody though.
Who is it for then?
It's not necessarily who is it for. It's certain people you don't want to do it to, like if they have anxiety with needles,
Oh.
if they feel uncomfortable with even getting a shot, I don't recommend
It hurts.
it. It depends on your definition of pain, right? Some people, when you get a shot, they say, "Ooh, that hurt." Some people say, "Oh, I felt that, but it was just a prick. It's not a big deal."
Okay.
Now, with the needle, you do have this dull ache sensation, but because it now has that referred pain up to your head, into your shoulder, into your arm, all that stuff, everybody experiences it a little bit different.
Okay.
And
That's so
so
interesting. I'm
when I
like so curious because I feel like that's me. I need that. I need to
let's
be.
do it. I'll be happy to come over and
Oh my
we
gosh.
can do a little test run.
But like I don't know why. I just feel like it wouldn't hurt, but then it is needles. So
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, a needle is going into your body. So you're going to
right.
feel something.
Right.
Now, it's a very thin, what we call a monofilament needle. So until it hits the muscle, you don't really feel it. But now, everybody has different sensitive areas, right? Some people don't like, getting touched on their calf or under
Okay.
their armpit. So certain
Yes.
body parts will have a little bit higher sensitivity versus others.
Okay, so okay. Do you like evaluate where a person needs to be dry needled? Like, how can you guarantee that it's going to like help relieve whatever it is that they're feeling in
Right.
that area?
hmm So I'm never gonna just have someone walk in the door and be like, "Oh, I'm gonna dry needle you."
Okay,
Usually
okay.
for me, it'll be like, "Okay, let's do a couple sessions and let's see where the underlying factors are of what's creating your pain.
Okay,
Where is it
okay.
coming from? Is it muscular? Is it neuro? Is it joint?" Um, I think that's it. But so anyways, some people will come in, they'll be like, "Hey, my doctor referred dry needling. I've done it before. I found it to help." Then I'll be like, "All right, let's do it.
Uh-huh,
Let's go
uh-huh,
on back. Let's get it going." But
uh-huh.
most of the times if I'm like, "Hey, have you heard of dry needling?" Like, "No, what is that?" I'm not gonna be like, "Well, let's go find out."
Yeah,
I'll
right.
usually, take them through the conservative route. Let's do some stretching, let's do some
Okay,
strengthening, let's do some what we call neuromuscular re-education
okay.
and try to build up the body, see how it responds to that.
I see.
And then based on the patterns of symptoms that they show, I will kind of determine, be like, "Hey, are you interested in trying this? Because I believe that it'll help you."
Hmm.
And if I'm being completely transparent, some of my friends give me a hard time saying, "Oh, you made me feel worse," blah blah blah. But 9 times out of 10, my patients love it,
Mm.
and they're like, "Let's go right back into those needles."
Oh man.
And so, yeah, it's really, I'll leave it up to your interpretation.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
be happy
yeah.
to do it on you. So you
Yeah,
just let
no,
me know
I'm
when.
like, okay, okay, I might take you up on that. I'm a little
Yeah,
bit
yeah.
scared, but at the same time, I feel like it could be life changing, is what I'm thinking. Like,
That's pretty.
no, because like it makes sense to me. Like
hmm
relieving tension and pressure in areas
hmm
where there's been stress built up, and the needling is breaking up that area, right?
Yeah.
Essentially. And so that makes perfect sense to me. I'm like, yes.
hmm
Like that makes a lot like why wouldn't I do that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. But this is not taught in school, you're saying?
It's introduced in school, so we know about the concept, but we don't know how to do it.
I see.
And so, yeah, there's like a class you take, and you have to be there for hours on end. And yes, you have to get needled on in every muscle, pretty much in your body
Oh my
during the
lord.
class. So
That's
that's pretty fun.
crazy. That's kind of crazy. Okay, well, you mentioned earlier that in the beginning, when you started your journey in PT, you had this desire to help athletes specifically. Like,
hmm
do you still want to do that in the future, or is that something that you've put to rest? Or,
Absolutely. So when I was working in my previous job in an outpatient ortho clinic, I had some athletes, whether they were college athletes, high school, middle school, athletes, and they would come with me with specific injuries.
mm,
And so I got a little taste of it, and it's a lot of fun because,
mm,
again, when you're working with that age group and you're working with that population of athletes, you get creative and try things that you wouldn't necessarily be able to try with other patient populations.
I see.
hmm And
Uh,
so right now, going back to how I have a little bit more flexibility on my schedule, a little bit more time, a little more energy to do things. So I do the assisted living facility work as my full-time job, but I am currently in the works of talking to a couple other PT colleagues and just personal trainers who I
mhm,
might want to do more like one-on-one training sessions or rehab sessions, things like that.
I see. Um, that would be cool.
Yeah,
Side hustle.
side hustle,
um,
inflation.
do you feel like there is okay, I don't know how to ask this other than just asking it. Like, I don't know how to be polite about it, okay? But
Oh, ask away. Yeah.
like, do you think there is a type of person that makes a better physical therapist than not? Like characteristics of a person or I mean, I remember Edward said like if you like people, it's
Yeah.
helpful.
Um, I think you definitely have to like
Yeah.
people because you're at the end of the day you're a salesman.
Mm,
Because I could tell someone to do XYZ and they're gonna be like, well, why? most of the times I'm going to say, why? Why is that going to help me? I can do this at the gym. Why do I need to do it through you?
Mm.
And so then I have to be like, okay, well, let me give you a reason why I'm worth it. And so with that, you've got to build a relationship. Again, like I don't want them to see me as like a healthcare provider. I want them to see me as their friend in a professional way
Right.
where they feel comfortable coming to me and they don't feel like it's work. So even when I was mentioning earlier, I wasn't kidding when I said I was a bad patient when I was younger. It wasn't that I was like trying to be, you know, I wasn't trying to be a troublemaker or anything. I didn't find it beneficial for me. I felt like, okay, I can go to LA Fitness or Lifetime and work out and get stronger, make sure my injuries heal, and I'll get back to it.
Mm.
Now, the physical therapist didn't really sell that to me at that point in time.
Mm.
And so for me, now me being a physical therapist, I don't want people to not show up to their appointments and be like, well, I don't want to go. I can do this at home.
Yeah.
Or I can do this at my own gym. And so kind of building a specific program for whoever that person is, and then also allowing them to have the feeling of like, oh, I'm looking forward to going to work with Jason. I'm looking forward to having a conversation and
Yeah.
bettering myself
Yeah.
essentially. And so, yeah, I think that's definitely important in terms of being able to interact with people and just kind of have that compassion.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I guess because you're literally, I mean, it's kind of like your wife too, like as a hairdresser,
Yeah.
you know, like
Oh,
my hairdresser is my therapist
yeah,
sometimes.
exactly.
I see. Okay. Well, is there something that you like the least about being a physical therapist?
Oh man. Before it was so at my previous job, it was dealing with insurance.
Oh, yeah.
So we're
Red
at a
tape is
point
always.
now, yeah. So we're at a point in healthcare where we have to prove why someone needs medical care. And
Right.
insurance company, I don't want to get like in trouble, but insurance companies want to save as much money as they can,
Right.
right?
Right. Of
They want
course.
you to be their client and be healthy so that they don't have to pay for
Payout.
an
Yeah.
injury or a catastrophic
Right.
event or something like that. And so when I have a patient who is finding benefits from physical therapy, but they want to keep coming, insurance is going to be like, well, they're already better. Why do they need to keep
Mm,
coming? But there's other layers to it. And for
right.
me, that was one of the things that really wore me out because I would be spending my time with these patients. And then 2 weeks later, the administrative team would come and be like, oh, by the way, that one visit, we're not going to get paid for it because insurance doesn't think that it was necessary.
What?
Yeah. And so with the new setting that I work in, I don't have to deal with any administrative insurance stuff.
Mm,
So I can't necessarily say that that's what I dislike about physical therapy. Um, I think one thing is when my patients or the individual doesn't want to do anything, and I can see from afar that they're declining, especially in the geriatric population, because we have this saying called, you don't use it, you lose it. So if you sit around, your muscles are
right.
slowly essentially dying. And so you have to work them so that they're
Mm,
functioning,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it honestly hurts me to see some people where they're like, Jason, I don't feel good today. I don't want to do it. And I'm like, I understand, but it'll make you feel better. I promise.
Mm,
But sometimes there's people who don't do it. They say, you know what? I know it's going to make me feel better, but I just don't want to.
right.
And I feel that, sometimes you just have so much going on, whether it's in your head or around, your environment, that it prevents you or it gives you less incentive to want to take care of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't necessarily dislike that. I wish there was a way to provide more than just what I do in that
Mm,
sense. But then there's a territory with that, right? I can't go too far out of my scope of practice, or now I'm not really doing my job.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that would be discouraging in any setting, not just physical
Right.
therapy. But yeah, I totally get it. I mean, that's like, even a teacher, like coach, everything. Like, I feel like when
Yeah.
you're working with people and they're just like, no thanks. But that's tough. That's tough.
Right.
Okay, like, what do you love then? Or what do you like about being a physical therapist?
I'd say time after time, the thing that's made me happy the most is when the patient starts to believe that the physical therapy is helping.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of times they're like super optimistic and they follow my recommendations, instructions on exercise. They do it, and there's various outcomes, sometimes good, sometimes not as good. Or I have to refer them to somewhere else because it's a certain specialty that's required to help them. But the thing that consistently makes me happy is when they start to buy in on it. Now,
Mm,
again, I find it very important to explain the purpose and the benefits of the things that they do during their sessions. Sometimes people can just be like, do this, do that, do this, and you'll be good. But if you tell them why this is going to help you with that, and then this is going to help you with that, they're like, okay, well, let's try it. And then they start to see it. They start to see the progression with their everyday activities.
mm-hmm.
They're like, it's actually not that hard to get up out of bed anymore. Um, when I take my when I go to the bathroom and I try to sit on the toilet, I don't feel fearful of falling. I don't feel like I'm going
Wow.
to trip over
Yeah.
a doorway.
Yeah.
Falls happen all the time,
Yeah.
and it stinks because I can't multiply myself and just be present for everyone.
Right.
But that's something, a lot of times in healthcare, you hear about, oh, she fractured her hip and then she died 2 months later because
Yeah. Yeah.
she wasn't doing it. It's very common. And so when these individuals, even in previous settings, it doesn't have to be geriatric, but when they're doing things and they're starting to buy into the program and they're saying, okay, it's starting to work. I'm starting to feel better. I believe in it. Let's keep going. I want to see more and more and more. And I'm like, let's do it.
Yeah.
What more could I ask for in my job than to see my patients enjoying the physical therapy and finding it to help them?
Mm.
And so
You
that I
know,
think that's my favorite part of it.
like some things are clicking for me as you're talking. Like even so, previous to what you just said, the things that you like and love about it. But you said what I don't like about it is like when people don't want to do it, right?
Hmm.
I just like empathetically put myself in your patient's shoes, and
Hmm.
I thought, I guess like if I was injured, like okay, like let's take okay, it's getting personal, but like let's take my skating career, right?
Hmm.
And then I injured myself really terribly.
Hmm.
I lost everything. I like 15 years of my career, skating career down the drain
Yeah.
in my eyes, right? I was like 17. So like
Yeah.
I felt like it was the end of the world. I went to physical therapy because I wanted to walk again. But at the same time, like I was depressed. I
Yeah.
felt like I had lost everything in that moment.
Yeah.
And so I can see myself even what you were saying, like just not, I don't want to do it. Like
Hmm.
I don't want to do it. And then, something hopefully would click. And it did for me, like that my life was not over and I'm going to move on. But then,
Right.
the part that transitions to the part that you said you love, right? And it's like, if you can buy into what your physical therapist is telling you and believe that your life is not over, it's not, but
Right.
in that moment when things are so bad or so painful, like, oh, that's really good, Jason. You're changing lives. Like that's what I mean.
Oh,
Everything was just clicking just now as you were talking. Like I was like, yeah, I guess like, it's not just like, oh, they don't want to do it. It's like
yeah.
deeper. It's deeper than that. Like
Yeah.
they don't want to do it because like I'm sure, like I'm sure there's more to whatever that is. And
Right. Everybody's got something different going on,
yeah.
right? Um, it's a very touchy, sensitive area when it comes to someone like you who, you were an avid figure skater and then you had these injuries that almost eliminated your dreams.
Right.
That's a huge impact on your life emotionally, psychologically, just well-being wise. So for me, I'm not just gonna be like, yo, it's okay. Let's just do some rehab and try
Just
to
do
get
some
you back on it.
exercise.
Like that, like you gotta find the niche for that individual.
Mm,
So one thing that might work for you might not work for, someone who's coming in 2 hours later. And so, yeah, I have to baby some people. And then some people I just tell it to them straight because that's what they want.
yeah.
And that kind of goes back to building that relationship with your patients. So they walk in the door, I'm not going to be able to know, like, okay, what's the best way to convince this person that physical therapy is going to help them? Usually I'll give them like what we call, a medical hypothesis and be like, okay, this is what I think is going on. This is what I think is going to help. Sometimes I'll tell patients, I don't think physical therapy is going to help. I just, and then I'll refer them to the specialty of what they need.
Mm-hmm.
But more so, I'll give them that general hypothesis and be like, okay, let's try this for 2 to 3 weeks. Just give me 2 to 3 weeks, follow the program. Let's see where we go with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then during that time, when they're doing these exercises, they're spending time with me, I'm starting to understand, oh, this works for her. This doesn't necessarily work for him.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of put the puzzle pieces together and be like, okay, now we've got a program. We've got a game plan that's going to work for that individual.
Wow.
And so that's part of the game, right? I guess that's another thing that I find joyful, but I also don't like sometimes because it doesn't, sometimes a puzzle piece is missing and I can never find it.
Right. Yeah.
But when you start to see the picture, it gets really exciting because you're like, okay, it's clicking, it's working. And that just gives you for me, it's like endorphins where I'm reassuring, like, yo, I'm actually kind of good at this. Like, I know what I'm talking about. And so, yeah, it's definitely, you want to be compassionate. You want to empathize with that individual, understand that I have all this, knowledge in terms of anatomy, physiology, physical therapy. They don't have all that knowledge. And so for them, if there's some other variables going on that prevents them from really wanting to do physical therapy, and they're just like, you know what, I'm not really in it. I don't really feel like doing it. You've got to understand that, and you've got to be patient with some people, or sometimes you just got to push them, be like, let's go. Like, you can do this. Let's do it. But some people don't want to hear that, right?
Right.
And so you just kind of have to find the right pieces.
Man, that's more than I thought to being a physical therapist.
It's a lot of fun. I love it. Yeah.
Well, I usually ask people before we end our time together if they have any advice for people that are maybe thinking about going into physical therapy, or just any life advice at all.
Physical therapy specifically, if anyone's interested in pursuing that field, I would say just open yourself up for as many opportunities as possible in terms of go and see everything that you can see, and then be like, okay, do I still want to do this? Because yeah, you have a doctorate, so it's kind of cool, and all that, and you're a healthcare provider and all that. But if you're not enjoying it, you're not helping yourself and you're not helping those people. And so you need to find out, okay, do I find joy? Do I find pleasure in helping other people? Life advice? I don't think I should be giving people life advice.
I'm sure you got something.
Just get out there, right? Just don't stay in your bubble. Whether it's traveling or setting up little goals in terms of just like, all right, be the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
Don't be complacent, right? Set your goals high. This is super cliche, but set your goals really high to the moon so that even if you fail, you end up at the top of the mountain.
Oh, I like that.
I didn't come up with that.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
That's good. That's good. I like that. I always heard something different. Like, shoot for the moon. If you miss, you land amongst the stars.
That sounds cooler than me.
No, that one was good.
Fail,
I like that. The mountain thing was good. Well, I am so grateful for your experiences and your journey, Jason. Thank you again for sharing them with me and people. Uh, I hate to put you on the spot, but I feel like I know what you're going to say. I usually ask people, like, if you're open to, like, if people have questions about PT or, like, maybe they just like this episode and want to
Hmm.
chat, would you be open to me connecting you with them?
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great.
Awesome. Well, yes, actually I can vouch for that because there was somebody I know and they wanted to like check out PT and then Jason hooked it up and let the person shadow him and everything. So like don't be scared, okay? Just reach out. Like this is an opportunity for you. If even maybe you're like even slightly thinking about it. Jason is a great resource along with Edward. So if you want to reach out, please DM me on social media or you can email me at podcastwigu@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, guys. Bye, Jason.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for having me. I had a lot of fun.
I had fun too. Thanks for coming on. Until next time, guys. Bye.